Welcome to the only wrestling podcast that covers the WWE developmental system from its inception to modern day. From OVW to MCW to HWA, Deep South, FCW, and much more. Hosted by Brian Asbury and Mortimer Blankenship. Now let's dive into what could have been, what should have been. Welcome to Developmentally Speaking.
Hey, before we get in this episode, can you do us a favor? Will you go ahead and subscribe to the channel?
Will you ring that notification bell?
And if you would, give this video a like. Well, enough of that mumbo jumbo. Let's get to the episode.
Let's talk developmentally speaking, glow up, and connecting through wrestling.
Hey everybody, I'm Morty.
And I'm Brian.
And on a revisited episode of Developmentally Speaking, we present to you Johnny Jeter. Johnny, how's it going?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to cut right to it, ask you the same question I ask everybody.
Right to the point.
What made you want to get into professional wrestling?
It's a great question. I think I liked the idea of being large, playing a character that could be larger than life, right? Like, I mean, obviously we were a kid. You have your favorites, the guys you like, the guys you hate. For me, I was always a huge fan, and I think at some point I was in college in my dorm room watching Velocity one night, and I was watching, I think, a WWE guy versus some indie guy. Nothing against the indie guy. I can respect anyone getting out there and doing the best they can, but I just was watching. I was like, I could do that, and I could do it better than that guy. So that possessed that, along with wanting to play a character, wanting to be a wrestler. I wanted to give it a shot, and if it worked out, great. If not, I could always go back to school, get a job, and do the 9-to-5 thing. So that's primarily why I got into wrestling. Yeah, because you just find that part of yourself that, like, whether you're a heel or babyface, you're a heel, you could be cocky, arrogant, dastardly, and you just find that part of yourself. You turn the volume up 10,000 times, and man, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Absolutely.
Babyface not so much fun. I could do it, but I like being a heel better.
I totally agree. Being heel is so much more fun than being a babyface. I think out of the 12 years I've been a manager, I've been majority heel, because if you're a babyface manager, you're like a glorified cheerleader. So, you know.
Yeah, it's for babyface. There's just such a fine line. You got to be You got to be confident without being cocky, and you just have to. It's a fine line. It's very tough, and it's hard to pull off, get sympathy. And then there's people that just love heels, and they just boo you as a babyface, and you're out there. Being a babyface, because you can't mess up either. Like a heel, you trip over the ropes getting in the ring, whatever. But people laugh at you. You go, oh, damn you. Babyface, killed whatever fire and whatever you had going out there to begin with. But yeah,
it's funny you mentioned Velocity. So you were always my favorite OVW wrestler, and I truly mean that. You were the only person that I bought an 8x10 for, and I was like 12, I think. You had the red tights, the long hair. You were like this. It's the only 8x10 I've ever bought. Yes. Yeah. And I bought it, and I remember I kept going up and looked. This was my first wrestling show, and I kept looking, and the guy's like, "You trying to steal something?" I was like, "No." So I bought your 8x10, and then that week you wrestled on Velocity, I believe. And I was like, holy shit. Like, what? Like, I didn't know how that developmental system worked back then. And I was like, I just met this guy.
And I think that's kind of the cool thing about Ohio Valley Wrestling, right? Because it's almost like legitimate future superstars of tomorrow. One time you might be watching them wrestle at OVW, the next minute they debut on Raw, SmackDown. I don't know if Velocity counts as debut, but you could say, "Hey, I know that guy." And that was the cool aspect of it. So, yeah. How old were you guys when you first started going?
2002, 2003.
So, yeah, I would have been 13 or 14, probably.
Holy shit!
So Dinsmore still had the Notre Dame tights,
yeah,
the little knee pads.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you guys ever go to Indiana to the old OVW arena?
No, I never went to that one.
Mechanicsville. Mechanic Street.
Mechanic Street. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun place too.
See, Brian, he went to more shows in Louisville. Me, I was lucky to get to go when they came around Seymour, or Austin, or So
The house
yeah,
shows, yeah.
yeah.
So,
So that's
so
when I got to go, which we always, of course, being from Seymour, we always had to cheer for the Damager. That was just
The
how it went.
damage.
Yeah.
Seymour,
so
Indiana, is that the one with that? There was one place we went to. It might probably Seymour, where that gymnasium was used in the movie Hoosiers. I think was it Seymour? It might have
no,
been something else, but there was one kind of
Oh, is
old
that
school.
is that Springville?
No,
No.
Milan.
uh, no, it's gonna bug me. I'll wake up at like 3 in the morning tonight, going, "Oh yeah, that's it. I gotta mess with those guys."
Wow. I'm trying to think where it was.
Vernon, Indiana, maybe. I don't remember.
There's a
Vernon
Vernon's.
Gym.
Yeah.
The old Vernon
Old
Gym.
Vernon Gym. I think it was Old
Hmm.
Vernon Gym. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
All those
No,
places.
that's
Yeah,
So where did you start your training at?
Ohio Valley. I started at Mechanic Street in the beginner class when I was there. Um, it was like, man, Chris K. It was the amazing Pookie, Joe Dirt, um, the back, and it was Dinsmore teaching. And granted, I mean, it's funny because before I left, I was in college, and I told my parents I wanted to use my college money to be a pro wrestler. My dad and mom, mostly my dad, weren't exactly thrilled about that. Uh, but when I went out there with my dad, I drove my truck all the way from San Diego to Louisville, lived
wow.
in some dude's basement, and we ended up going to the beginner class on Saturday. I mean, the idea you have of, I mean, internet back then isn't what it is today. So I
Hmm.
had a loose look at the website, OVW. I see Smooth Johnny Spade, blah blah blah. And I mean, granted, there was like Shelton and Brock and those guys, Orton, but you're like, I'm bigger than Spade. I think I could hang with these guys. At least there's one guy. Uh, so you think WWE developmental school, right? And then you get there, and then it's just this old Civil War fort in Indiana, and it's just this little. I mean, place looked like something out of Rocky. No heating, no AC, and there was just an old, just painted, but it looked like it was painted 9,000 years ago, and it just said OVW. It was like a little triangle sign out there, and I saw everyone at some rinky-dink uh, bench table, or like a park table, just talking, and my dad's looking at me. He's like, "Is this the place?" I'm like, "I think so." So so we went there, and it's just a motley crew of people. Everyone was very nice, but like my dad was just kind of like, I think my dad was like, he's gonna get it out of his system and move home. Whatever. Have your fun. I'll see you in 3 weeks. But no. So we started trading in that beginner class, but I think for me, and they really kind of took to me, Chris Cage, Mark Magnus, and our practice really started once the beginner class ended, because you had guys like Cena, Conway, um, Dinsmore, all those guys staying after to work with us, Shelton sometimes, and that's where our real training kind of began. So yeah, and then they started inviting us to house shows, but we couldn't actually. Am I trailing off? Because I can keep going.
No, 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 no. Keep
I'm
going.
drinking in every bit of information you're telling me. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what this is
Well,
about.
so we started training, but I mean, WWE pays these guys that are under contract to be on TV. So why put someone who's not under contract on TV? So they were like, you guys need experience, but you can't get it here. So let's get you guys some matches. So we started driving to Dyersburg, Tennessee. We wrestled for MCW. I met Dustin Starr there, a few other guys. I think Mo from Mo and Mabel, he was running it. So Chris Cage and I, and Magnus, we all went down there and just wrestled, got some experience. Horrible matches.
So real fast, Dyersburg. See, I've done a show in Dyersburg. Actually, I rode down there with Rob Conway,
Yeah,
um, and back then, were they doing shows in? Was it the Herb Welch Arena there in Dart? Do
maybe,
you remember? Do
maybe,
you remember?
probably.
Because that
Who
that
know-
that arena looks like it's pretty old, and it was a pretty neat place to just be in. Like you felt the history of the place. I was wondering if that would have been the same area, like Dyersburg,
I
Tennessee.
think I don't. I remember just being too nervous to notice something like that. I just went backstage. I kept my mouth shut. I kept my ears open. I just kind of doing what I told. Had no match. I think I maybe had like maybe no. That was my first match in Dyersburg, I think. Uh, but no, I wasn't like, oh man, what a great place. This has so much history. Maybe now if I went back there I would, um, but yeah, funny. One quick funny story, kind of morbid, slightly. So I learned this lesson the hard way. when when you're coming out as a wrestler and you get in the ring and you're a heel, right? The rule of thumb is if you see a hot girl in the audience, 99.9% of the time, she's someone's girlfriend. I didn't know that. So I got up on the ropes and I see some hot chicken. I'm a moron. I'm like, hey, winking at her stupid shit. And then I get in the ring, pretty much forget my whole match and then do it. Anyway, the next time no, was it? I think it was the next time I went down. I think we wrestled that night, and that chick that I winked at, she got like bit by a bug or something, had an allergic reaction and passed away. And then I was with Derek King, and so we ended up going to this chick's funeral. And I had this surreal moment, like I'm at a fucking funeral in Dyersburg, Tennessee. I don't know anyone here. Like, what am I doing with my life? Where am I? Like,
Oh my
what, what's going on? And like, not, I have full sympathy for her, but like, I just had this moment. I'm like, where am I in my life? you know, so it was,
How did it end up here?
yeah. I was like, yeah, where am I? Like, how do I? This is I don't know. It was just I just had a surreal moment. But long story short, we ended up having matches in Dyersburg, blah blah blah. Eventually, we got some darks on OVW TV in Indiana, and I actually have some on those on VHS. But we ended up doing that. They moved to the new arena, and then I ended up. I'm giving you the cliff notes here. Uh, but I ended up signing my first developmental contract, and then I was getting paid to wrestle. Chris Canyon had a big part in that. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, that's the half cliff notes.
So how long
Now I
did
can tell
you? How long before you got your developmental deal?
you. Less than 2 years, I think. I started wrestling right after 9/11, September
Hmm.
2001, and then I got signed April 2003. So it was pretty quick. And I would say uh, when Chris Canyon, after the invasion angle, he came down, he ended up hanging out with myself, Chris Cage, Mark Magnus, and I think he was at a point in his career where he was burned out.
Hmm.
But I think he took to us because we were always watching tape, the way we talked about wrestling, the way we would laugh, make fun of things. Uh, I think it brought back that joy in wrestling, I think, for him. And so to reciprocate, I think he wanted to train us, teach us, and so he worked a lot with us, after practices. And there was contracted talent there. We weren't contracted. That probably would have loved to work with him, but he chose us. And eventually, he asked Cornette if he could work a program with me on OVW TV after we moved to the new arena. Had some matches with him there, and I got signed. I did go to a tryout camp about 3 months in before that, but I didn't get signed, and yeah, so I got some good feedback. I can tell you that story if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I'm talking too much.
No,
No, no. This is
Uh,
about the thrill seeker.
so I 3 months in, I was working at Chili's. So I lived in this basement in Audubon Park, and I was working at Chili's 6 days a week. And the only time I had time to practice was Saturdays, the beginner class. Um, well, what was I? Oh yeah, so I ended up saving all my money to fly home to San Diego to see my family. Well, then Dinsmore comes up to me and says, "Hey Johnny, you're wrestling at the Six Flags Super Summer Sizzling Series. Like you and Cage are wrestling Batista in like a 90-second squash match." And I was like, "But I bought a ticket to go home." I'm like, "Oh, I could just cancel it and just wrestle." So I ended up canceling it. They didn't refund my money, and that was a lot of money for me to fly home to San Diego. So I did the match, and Danny Davis found out that I lost the money on that flight home and canceled that. So he got me into a tryout camp at HWA in Cincinnati. And so when I went there, Shannon or Daphne was there, April Hunter was there, Andy Anderson. There was a bunch of guys who were trying to get signed. So I did the week-long trial camp. Again, 3 months in, I had no idea what I was doing. And they did stuff. Dr. Tom and Kevin Kelly were there, and they do stuff like, okay, Brian, Johnny, you guys have a 10-minute match. Johnny, you're the heel. Brian, you're the baby face. Go out there, put on something great. Then we plan something, and right before we go in, they go, okay, card subject to change. Okay, Johnny, you're wrestling, Andy Anderson now, and you're the babyface. He's the heel. Go. You have 8 minutes. Go. We haven't even talked. And they see how you respond to the situations. Or they might say, hey, Brian, you have a match at WrestleMania against Chris Jericho. You have 2 minutes. Make me want to buy the pay per view. Go, and you have no time. Go. So very stressful. Anyway, didn't get signed. Well, they didn't call me, and I saw Kevin Kelly backstage at Ohio Valley Wrestling, and I was like, "Hey, what are the results of the trial camp?" This was like 4 or 5 weeks later. He's like, "Oh, well, you didn't get signed." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I figured." Uh, anything I can do, like anything I can do. They're like, "Oh no, for as long as you've been wrestling, you did great." Um, Matches were good for 3 months in. Promos were good for 3 months in. There was just one problem, and I was like, "What?" And I'm like, and then I think Big Bad John walked by in the locker room, big meathead, and they're like, look like a superstar. So I knew what that meant. It meant get bigger and look the part. We know you can wrestle. We can develop you here, but you got to look like someone that's going to turn heads in an airport. So, so yeah, I ended up just working out harder, got bigger, and got signed.
I like the term "turn heads in an airport." That's the perfect way to describe that. I never thought about that. Yeah, because I mean, walking through an airport, a big wrestler walks by, you're gonna be like, "Oh, who's that?" So yeah, I've never.
Exactly.
That's kind of
Yeah, look the part and just look like a superstar. And that's kind of what they were wanting back then. So I did my best to do that.
Absolutely. So you finally get the developmental deal, and how was that feeling? Like
Uh,
you got it, you made it.
what's funny is it was surreal. I guess everything's surreal in wrestling. But so this is well, Mark Magnus Cage and I met some chicks, and they wanted to go in their hot tub the night before, and I
you just had to turn them down, right? You had something else
well,
going.
so I ended up I as we were getting ready to go, I went to my closet and I grabbed my bathing suit, and then Magnus is like, "You fucking idiot! Like, what are you doing? Why are you bringing that?" Like, wait, we're not gonna go swimming? Like, I was so stupid. And then so this is point. I don't even know why I'm telling this part of the story. So anyway, we were out till like 4 in the morning, there, and then we come back, and then Cage and Magnus get on the couch. I was tired. I ended up kind of just going to my room. I was gonna sleep, and then I get a call on my cell phone, I think, or maybe house phone. I don't remember. And it's like, Johnny Gier, Dr. Tom Pritchard, how you doing? And I thought it was kind of a joke, and I'm like who's messing with me? He's like, no, Dr. Tom. I'm like, oh, hey, how are you, sir? And he goes, good. And he goes, how would you like to work for World Wrestling Entertainment? And I was like, absolutely, yeah, that'd be great. He goes, okay, well, and again, inflation now. This is, what, 20 years ago. All right, we're gonna start you at 500 a week. I think it was 5 or 750. I don't remember. Let's say 500, 500 a week, and yeah, now you can quit your job. Just you're getting paid to work out and wrestle, and welcome to WWE. And I was like, all right, sweet, thanks, sir. And then we got the phone, and I was, I was out of it. I half asleep. I hadn't slept. I was just like what? Like, so then I walk out of my room, and I see Cage in a in a recliner, and I see Magnus in like his Adidas pants, his gray Syracuse shirt, glasses on, bong on the table. They're both lit eyes, and I was just like, I was like, dude, that was Dr. Tom. I just got sighted, and Magnus sitting there like this on the couch. He just the lies lit up. He's like, "Congratulations, dude." It was again, it was surreal, and I think I needed time to digest what had happened. But yeah, no, it was a reality, and I was lucky enough to have that opportunity.
I always remember Louisville loved you. I remember the crowd was always hot and loud. Um, my favorite OVW program is you and Capitelli. That's the best championship story they've ever told, in my opinion. I
Oh,
loved
thanks,
it.
man.
And
Means a lot.
Dean Hill, with
On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad did it hurt to get flipped off by Dean Hill?
How'd you keep a
There's not a
straight
day.
face?
There's not a day that goes by where I don't think about Dean Hill and him flicking me off like that son of a bitch. No, honestly, I don't think I did not know he was going to do that. I just knew I was going to go out there, cut a promo. I think I knew Dean was going to get pissed off, storm off. I didn't know he was going to get in my face and flick me off. But again, you're so in the moment. Like, there are times in wrestling where you can kind of like break character and laugh about certain things. But I think I was so in it at the time,
Hmm.
and he gets in my face, flicks me off, and I was just mentally, I was, the heel Johnny Jeter. So I'm like, like this clown. Um, but yeah, and now watching it back, it's like I think I would say there were a lot of fun moments at Ohio Valley Wrestling, but one of the ones I hear about probably the most was yeah, Capitelli storyline, but primarily the Dean Hill flick in my face, and I always it was hilarious. It's funny watching it back now because yeah, years later, and you know I don't know,
he
trying to get over at my expense, that little weasel.
he beat the shit out of that table, and then he jumped up, and then he came
Yeah,
back and did it
yeah,
again.
yeah. Got to get his shine in. Got to get his shine in. Dean
Yeah.
Hill.
Well, he told us that was Paul Heyman's idea, didn't he?
It could, yeah, yeah. That whole Heyman era, like, I
Yeah.
mean, that,
That
yeah,
was
that a
great.
lot of that was a lot of that went on was didn't happen without Heyman knowing about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Heyman told him to do that. I don't remember being notified that he or informed that Dean Hill was going to flick me off. I had no idea. You know,
Oh,
Dean, love Dean, little weasel.
I remember the Summer Sizzler series with you and Jericho, and they made that
Hmm.
that was a big deal. I
Oh man,
enjoyed, I loved it.
yeah. Oh, Jericho was awesome. Let me real quick. Let me go back to Cap because I feel like I glassed over Cap. Um, no, working with Capitelli was incredible, man, and he just was so selfless. And
Hmm.
I think if there was anyone with the like a moral compass at OVW that was just an all around stand up class act dude, no ego, just you got what you saw, when you met him face to face, what you got
Hmm.
was what was genuinely him, and he was a genuine good person. And man, he brought out the best in me in ways I couldn't even have imagined. And I'm forever grateful for those matches because, like you're bringing it up 20 years later. That's like, or 15 years. I don't know how many years, but um, yeah, that's probably some of those matches are the ones I'm the most proud of with Cap, and yeah. So just want to say that.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that was one of the most emotionally invested, like those that
oh
crowd was.
You know what was insane too was, again, we were developmental, and then you got guys
Hmm.
in WB. We're all trying to get to the next level. They say, okay, imagine showing up before TV and Heyman's just like, Johnny, Cap, you got 30 minutes on TV. Blah blah blah. Cap or Capitelli, Jeter's taking everything from you. He's taking your belt, your life, your leg, your this. He's humiliated, like just everything. He's like, we want to see it, so come bring it. So I mean, the amount of pressure on us, and then it's like,
Hmm.
oh, we're doing 30 minutes, no commercial breaks. We're not break. I mean, just the weight of that at the developmental level, and being able to go out there, and I mean, people
and
get
hit it
blown
out of
up
the park.
and hit it out of the park, and
Yeah.
tell a story for 30 minutes. Don't get winded. Keep people emotionally invested. Don't do moves for the sake of doing moves. Like, make it mean something. And I feel like we did that. But
Hmm.
coming up with the psychology of that and stuff, it's tough. If you watch that match back and you see Cap and I, we're like, 5 minutes, let's just fuck around. But we're pissed off at each other. Let's just like really go at it like we hate each other. Like, I mean, some guys tie up. We tied up, but we were like, we had nothing planned there. Like, it was just go at each other and like, fuck you, fuck you. Let's just, whatever happens happens.
Yeah.
We know where we're gonna go, but let's just see how it plays out. And that's what we did. So yeah, some of the funnest matches in my career. Loved working Cap.
I hated that. The whole purpose of this podcast was to talk about people like yourself and Seth Skyfire and Johnny Spade and all these people because mainly everybody just talks about what they call the big four, but like you and Capitelli, that's what got me emotionally invested. And I hate that it took so long. But now with YouTube and stuff, it's. I wish more people would have saw it back then, so they
Oh
could
yeah.
appreciated it, for what it was because it was amazing.
No,
Everything
it's
you
funny.
guys did down there is amazing.
I have every. I mean, yeah, it's Hunter and or it's Shawn Michaels and Hogan on the front, but I have every OVW, the Heyman era, on DVD. Just every TV episode and stuff. And I watched some of that stuff back, man. Dude, we had some solid talent back then.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
It was
Oh
sick.
yeah. That's
man,
awesome.
what a time to be at Ohio Valley. Great, yeah.
I've always said there's always one thing that's burned in my brain, and that's "Hello, Kentuckiana, welcome to 4400 Shepherdsville Road." Like that's
Hello,
just
Kentucky Anna. Sorry, man.
yeah.
Yeah,
I love.
yeah. I will say, I know I gave Canyon credit, but like, man, even Cornette and Danny Davis, man, I without the opportunities that they put in front of me, like even to your point earlier, Jericho, like, uh, dude, like as you know, at those Super Six Flags, I can't say that fast, Six Flags Super Summer Sizzling Series, there we go. They always brought a WWE guy in, right?
Hmm.
And there's so much talent at OVW. Who do you choose to wrestle
Hmm.
these WB guys? But there was one summer, man, I got to tag with Scott Steiner. I tagged with Benoit. I wrestled Jericho. I think we wrestled Kane. Um, I mean, my God. And yeah, there was so many opportunities that I had. And I remember that Jericho match. Jesus, I was so nervous. Like, you don't want to disappoint. Well, one, they're putting you in there with a main eventer, not just any main eventer. Like this,
Hmm.
like there's like at the time there was all the guys on top, a big gap, and then everyone else. No offense to everyone else, but like you knew if you were in the top tier. Jericho always was in the top tier, guys. And the thing is if they're putting you in there with a top guy like that, you better not hurt him. You better
Hmm.
not injure him because people are paying good money up in WWE, millions of dollars to see him on a regular nightly basis. So just the fact that they trusted me enough to be in the ring with Jericho at the developmental level
Hmm.
um, was a huge compliment, but also it was scary, and
But it
I
speaks
think
volumes of what
Hmm.
you were, what you were as a wrestler.
thanks, man. I think it's hard to know at the time. Like I mean, I knew I was capable, but you don't really know what you're made of until you have moments like that, and you either sink or swim. Like the Capitelli match, 30 minutes on TV, like we could have easily sunk.
Hmm.
And up until that point, any major opportunity that was given in front of me, I'd like to think that I succeeded. And so with that match with Jericho, I looked at it like that. Um, and yeah, and they also say the only way you get better, more or less, is by working guys that are better than you. So for me, man, God, wrestling a guy like Jericho, who's here, and I'm
Hmm.
way down here, it's just like, well, maybe I have an opportunity to wrestle at that level and get that much better because the way they move, how light they are, the psychology, the timing, the nuances of little things they do, the pacing. You learn that working guys that are better than you.
Hmm.
And my God, he was so cool. And we planned. He was fresh off my match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, and so I had a lot of that the rough outline of the psychology of that match. Then we also modified a few things. So as I was putting the match together with him, normally when you wrestle a guy like that, you're just like, "What do you want to do, sir? Happy to do whatever you want, sir. You tell me what you want to do, sir. No, what do you want to do? I don't know. You're obviously the veteran. I'm happy to do whatever you want to do. All that bullshit." But he was like, "No, man, tell me what you want to do." I'm like, "Well, I know I thought maybe I mean, I don't remember exactly how we put together the match, but he's like, why don't you just out wrestle me? We'll do this and that. Then I'll take over. You end up getting over me on Shine, and then like we'll go to the outs. Oh, I did recommend the spot where, if I'm gonna out wrestle you and you get pissed off, he ends up chopping me. I think I turn him around, I chop him. He goes to the outside. I get on him out there. I throw him back in. I go to the top rope. I do a flying crossbody off the top, land on him, and shortly after that, we did the heat. And I took that from the Michaels match. I'm like, hey, well, there's a spot with Michaels where this and that. So in this situation, I'll play the part of Michaels. You play yourself.
That's
uh,
awesome.
yeah, but he was so cool. And then after, man, I have so many stories. Afterwards, we went to Longhorn Steakhouse, and my mom had flown out for that match, so she saw the whole thing. And afterwards, she went up to Jericho and thanked him, like, "Hey, thank you for wrestling my son. He's always been a huge fan, and it just means a lot to both of us." And he said, "Oh, it was my pleasure. Hopefully, next time I can put him over." Because I mean, he won the match, but
Right.
he was like, "Oh, I put him over." And then I think it was like 4 weeks later, we were backstage at Raw, and normally you get in the ring, you work out, you find out who you're wrestling. Maybe you work, maybe you don't, and this and that. If you don't work, you have to watch the monitor the whole time. And once the show's over, pack your bags, go back to the hotel. So I wasn't working that night, but I saw, I think it was Sylvain Grenier, maybe, I think it was Sylvain. Uh, and I was just like, hey man, can you get me, anytime you go backstage in developmental, you always want to come back off the road with a new WWE t-shirt. Like, hey, look at me. I was on the road this weekend. I have a new Survivor Series shirt. I have my fanny pack. I'm playing the part. Whatever the pay-per-view was that month, you wanted that t-shirt or anything.
Mhm.
So, everyone knew I was a big Jericho mark. So I'm like, hey, Sylvan, can you give me one of the new highlight reel t-shirts? He's just like, yeah, sure. I'll go try. So then next thing you know, I'm watching the monitor and someone hits me over the chest and I have the highlight reel t-shirt. It's Jericho. And I felt like a moron, like you little mark. And he's like, I just kind of was like, oh my god, and he laughed and he said something like, hey man, here you go. And he's like, I really enjoyed wrestling you. He's like, I had a great time and I can't wait to do it again. And I was like, thank you. And felt stupid, but I was actually kind of honored because, yeah, man, he was a huge inspiration. Dude, on my in-ring style, everything, man. I copied a lot of his stuff. Like he was that was huge for me.
That's wow. That's fantastic. That is awesome. It just I could see both sides of where you're saying that it was sort of embarrassing, but also um, for you to get that. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Is there any other fond OVW stories, memories?
So many.
We've had Rip on, so you can say whatever you need
Yeah,
to
I was about to say, do you have any Rip Rogers stories too?
Yeah, I have one. Cage would probably tell another one. I'll let him tell that one. But the one I'm thinking of, and I think I've told it on Rip and Von Lyons' podcast, was Melissa Coates was at Ohio Valley Wrestling, and again, rest in God, rest in peace. Um, Melissa, sweetheart, I love her to death. Wasn't the greatest professional wrestler. So when you get in there and you know someone's not as good as like you'd hope them to be, you work around that. You accentuate their strengths, hide their weaknesses. What was her strength? She's a bodybuilder. So we get in there for the shine, and I'm the heel. So I start doing a pose off. We go to tie up. I'm like, whoa, 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 and I just start hitting these just like Hogan poses and like I'm bodybuilding. And next thing you know, well, she goes, "Oh, okay, okay," and then she hits the pose, and I fall back and go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like getting crazy. And thinking this is in practice, and at the time, when Rip was training, we had like, man, 4 or 5 hour practices, and it was a lot. Guys were getting. I mean, I love Rip to death. I learned so much from him, but there were times where I think all of us felt like we were getting run into the ground a little bit. And careers are short. Life, you only have a certain amount of bumps on your card. Uh, but so I'm not saying you, tr- you tr- you try to any opportunity you can to not, I don't want to say not bump, but just to work smarter.
hmm
You tried it because I mean, Rip knew I could go. I could fucking bump and bump and bump and bump and bump. You put me in there with anyone, I'll bump my ass off. So little things like that. Anyway, so he sees that and he stops the match. He goes, "What the fuck was that, Johnny?" And I'm like, well, she's a bodybuilder, so I thought, hey, if I bodybuild and she does it, I'm the heel. She beats me. I have a reason to cheat. And he's just like, "Get the fuck out!" Like, kick me out of the ring. Kind of worked to my advantage, I guess. I got to go get out of the ring. But but yeah. What else? Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. I think if you name people, I could tell you guys stories or
I
like this and
know
that or what.
Cage. When we had Cage on, he told us the story that he would have Rip would have him do this drill, and he would lock up, and it would take like an hour, and then Rip would just leave to go get his kid, and he'd come back, and you guys would still be locking up. Like nobody knew he was going. They knew where he was going, but he thought they just acted like it was part of the drill.
Yeah, he did that. I mean, I don't remember him doing that often, but like, yeah, no. I mean, there were days where literally for hours all we did was lock up. We did an hour chain drill where it was like, it was you know, uh, work a hold, like just kind of chain wrestle, like work an arm, work a head, work a leg, work the abdominals, work the back, and then I was like, okay, now get heat on the back, the heat on the neck, leg, arm, and so it kind of taught you the difference between the two. So now when you get in there, it's just like chain. Like obviously you're not going to throw a punch, you're not going to kick. You can still kind of like maybe drop knees and stuff, but you're wrestling, kind of like you watch
hmm
Malenko get in there. He's very technical. Well, you have to practice that. So it's like, all right, we have 2 minutes, work an arm, So like, you're tying up, you're pumping the arm. Maybe you twist it again, you snap mirror. Maybe you turn around, drop a knee on the arm. Maybe, you whip it to the mat, and you grab a hold, and then maybe they reverse out of it. Then you end up always going back to that, not
Mm-hmm.
punching or kicking, but wrestling technically on that body part. And then it was like, all right, now get heat. Now you stomp the shit out of them. You change gears, go hard, then you slow it down, you pace. Then maybe they fire up, and now you have a reason to change gears, shut them back down. But again, you're always going back to the leg, the arm, the head, the neck, the back, all that stuff. And I think we did those drills for hours. Man, we burned probably 10,000 calories every practice. I remember he's like, John, he's like, have you eaten today? You had protein? I'm like, no. He goes, you need to eat a protein bar right now. Like, eat a protein bar right now. Um, yeah, I think we were all like really leaning out and burning so many calories because we go to the gym right after that. We were just so tired and exhausted. But Rip was incredible. I mean, regardless of what I mean, keeping us that long, and I mean, it is what it is. But I learned to work old school. You could put me in there with anyone. You put any of those guys at that time in there with
Mm-hmm.
anyone, and you say heel, baby face, get heat on the back or neck, arm, leg, whatever. Go out there, have a match. Sure, no problem. I could do it. We never planned anything. You can get in there, tell the story, and I think that's such a lost art
Yeah.
nowadays. Like
Yeah.
people can plan matches, but like getting in there with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
working heel or babyface, doing that, that's such a lost art. And telling a story, keeping it simple, telling a story.
I agree. So before you got the main roster, was there? Did you have an idea? Were you throwing ideas, or was that presented to you on where you wanted
Oh yeah.
Johnny Jeter to go?
Uh, I Yes and no. I came up like the writers back then. Um, nothing against them, but I think they have the wrestlers do a lot of the work for them. So you're a
Mm-hmm.
writer at WWE, you can come up with the storylines, or maybe they say, hey, Brian, you're responsible for Ken Anderson, Johnny Jeter, Chris Cage, Mark Magnus, and I don't know, Mickey James. Rather than you try to think about all these storylines, they ask the wrestlers and you say, hey, Johnny, I need 3 storylines to pitch to creative next week, so come up with some stuff. So then you write some storyline stuff. Oh, I want to feud for the Intercontinental title. I'm going to win the world title, or I'm going to do whatever it is. Oh, I think I'd work good with so and so, Eddie Guerrero. Let me write something. I don't know. Whatever you put, you give that to them, and the next thing you know, you might see your story playing out for someone else. But either
Mm.
way, that's what you. So we were always pitching ideas to the creative team,
Wow.
um, and it was what it was. For me, I think my problem at OVW was I was struggling to find an identity in the sense of who Johnny Jeter was. Like, you guys saw me as a heel, wrestle, babyface,
Mm-hmm.
and even as a heel, I sometimes always felt kind of like a Jericho clone. You know what I mean? Or like
Mm-hmm.
I needed to find something to put my twist on myself to make me different, and that's a very hard thing to do because a lot of gimmicks have been done before. So I was young. It's hard to figure out a character,
Mm-hmm.
and that idea, and figure that out because sometimes you had to think about that, and other times they'd just be like, hey, you're going to be a cheerleader, cut your hair, and you're in a group of 5 guys. And I didn't do anything with that. Like, it's like, hey, you get called up. So some guys get called up for doing something, and you're like, all right. And sometimes you have to come up with your own idea.
Were
So,
you? Go ahead.
well, you've got a
Oh, go
question that's
ahead.
probably chronologically before mine, so you can go ahead.
So, how your initial thoughts on that? How did you feel?
About the storyline stuff.
Yeah, like they're just like cut your hair. You're gonna be a cheerleader.
Oh, I mean, look, I think everyone has an idea of who they are and
Mm-hmm.
what they can do and what character they imagine themselves being. Everyone wants to be the badass. Hey, look
Mm-hmm.
at me! I'm a cutthroat baby face, or I'm a cutthroat heel who takes names, and I'm cocky, arrogant, and blah blah blah. But I can kick ass. Or maybe I'm a young fire baby face. And then it's like, oh well, you're gonna be a male cheerleader, which is something no character I've ever done before,
Mm-hmm.
or any of us. I don't think we were exactly thrilled, but it's like drop the ego a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, it's like you're getting paid to professional wrestle. Like, you do whatever you're told. You know what I mean? Like, not everyone has the luxury to be a Brock Lesnar and look the way you look and do what you want to do. Like, I think Brock could easily say, I don't want to be a cheerleader, and they'd be like, all right, no problem. We'll call you up in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it
Hmm.
was like they might say, and back then too, there was always like heat. What if you say no? Like for example, Elijah said no, and I remember Hunter Triple H telling me, he goes, I can't believe he had an opportunity to come on the road and wrestle with guys like with us, DX, Ric Flair, and he turned it down. Like what a moron. It ended up working out long run for him because everyone has their own paths in
Mm-hmm.
professional wrestling. But for us, we weren't thrilled, but we did it. We enjoyed it. We made the most of it. We embraced it. And then we also recognize that after it's over, you can do whatever you want. You just got to come up with that idea and then go from there. The hard part is getting your foot in the door, signing that booking contract, and getting on the road.
Oh yeah.
So
And go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
Go.
I was just gonna say, so what is Johnny Jeter doing now in life?
What is Johnny doing in life now? So, after I got out of professional wrestling, I went back to college, got my accounting degree, my bachelor's, and I got into IT audit. And now I'm an IT audit manager at this company called Insight Enterprises Incorporated. And yeah, I manage IT SOCs, uh, and any operational audits that fall underneath that IT bucket for the company. It's funny because as I said out loud, it's like I don't think when you're a kid you go, I want to grow up and be an IT auditor. But it's weird the way you find yourself in certain careers. But yeah, man, no, I have my degree. It affords me the luxury of providing for my family, and yeah, it pays the bills, so I can't complain. But um, I would say, yeah, I never stopped loving professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I'm not 20 years old anymore. I have a wrestling school, Manacor
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling Academy, and I've been training guys there. Actually, there was this chick that came by today, Samara. She has a tryout with AEW next week. I was working with her in the ring a little bit. I'm currently closed because I had my kid. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't have the bandwidth to work full time and then take care of the kid and do the school. I think I'll probably open back up eventually. I just right now the kid's a newborn, so yeah, I get my wrestling fix with the school, and then I do that during the day. And we had a show last October. It was fun. Movement Brewery,
Yeah,
Movement Massacre.
we definitely share all the Manticore stuff. Whenever you put it out there, we share it for you. So
I know. I noticed that. Thank you guys. It means a lot to me that you guys
Absolutely.
do that. So I really appreciate that.
If you had any advice to give to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
No, I know exactly what you're saying. Well, I'd say two things. One, go stay in school. Like have I know people say, "Oh, this is my career. I'm devoting all my time." But no, like there's a good chance you might get signed and then you get hurt and that's it. You don't want to be 40 years old, 50 years old wrestling a National Guard armory for 10, $20
Mm.
because you weren't smart enough to have a backup plan. So I would say, and Dinsmore told me when I first got to WWE, he's like, register for classes at IU, or he said something like that. So my first advice would be stay in school. Second performance advice is like if you legitimately want to be a pro wrestler, there's a mindset that you need to have that I feel like a lot of people don't have. There's playing wrestler and there's being a wrestler. And for us at Ohio Valley Wrestling, when we were at OVW, every you wanted to get called up. How do you get called up? You have to be the best. How do you be the best amongst all your peers who are literally amazing at what they do? We're all
Mm-hmm.
learning, but like you had Punk there, you had Anderson, you had like Dinsmore, you have Conway, you have Cage, you have Magnus, you have the Tolans, like I mean Dean Visk, Chet the Jablonski. I mean like you get in there, like maybe you do a drill, maybe you blow up, and then maybe you see another guy get in there and does the blow up drill and he doesn't get blown up, or maybe he's blown up but he pushes himself that much harder. You know what I mean? Like it's because he wants to be the best. He's not stopping. He's not going, "Oh, let me get my breath and do this." Like there's also an ego involved where
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to act like you know it all because as soon as you think you know it all, you stop learning. There's a mindset like just never stop learning, drop the ego, have the mindset where I want to be the absolute best. But what does that mean? That means showing up early, last to leave, get in there and run those fucking ropes until you're out of breath because you're getting the most value out of practice that you possibly can because there's someone else working 10 times harder than you who may want it more than you. Don't let that happen. You be the best you possible. And if there's something you don't know, that's okay. Work on it until you master it. Don't give anyone a reason to think that you aren't the best at what you do. And I think there's such a mindset like, oh, let me show up to practice. Let me do a drill. Oh, I think I'm going to sit out this, or, I know everything. But then I'm watching their match. Their punches look like shit. Their kicks look like shit. Their psychology's off, and all they're doing is fucking head scissors and lucha. Not, I don't want to say lucha, head scissors and a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit in the match. Lucha's a style, and there is that. It's just different from what American style. And I'm not saying lucha's wrong. I'm just saying if you're doing it, tell a story, and you're just doing moves for the sake of moves, like you're not doing it right. You don't know, so don't pretend like you do. And so that you can be like, passable, good at something, or you can be great. And the guys that are great, who are legitimately know how to work, it's a mindset of an attitude change, and I feel like that's something that you should never lose if you want to make it to the next level, and not just make it to the next level, but be great, be the best.
I agree, and I think your guys' class is the best class to ever have developmental. Those years, those people that came out of those years were the best that WWE's ever produced developmental.
By far.
Thanks, man. We had a
And that,
blast. We had so much fun.
and now it's nice to see that OVW gets this love, and they're showing like with the Ruthless Aggression series, and now in the new WWE game that comes out, Leviathan's in it, Prototype's in it.
Oh, really?
It's a bonus pre-order. I'm hoping maybe a little Davis Arena. You don't know. If they're
cool.
if they're putting Leviathan and Prototype and Orton from '02 and then Lesnar from '01, I think they said like they have to. So it'd be nice for OVW to get a little love like that.
That'd be cool. That would be really cool. I really hope they do like a documentary on that time, because it really was lightning in a bottle. All that talent there. Heyman, Al Snow, Lance Storm, just even the wrestlers, and just that history. It's good that you guys have this podcast and that you're trying to keep the memory alive of that time, because I almost feel like that era is almost like a forgotten era, both at developmental level and in WWE, because maybe Benoit was there. They don't want people to remember the Benoit years, but like, I don't know. I'm glad that you guys you have this podcast. You're kind of embracing and showing your love for that period of time. That meant so much to you guys and so much to us. And yeah, I'm honored that you guys invited me on. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I want to say thank you for everything you've done for wrestling and continue to do. I've always been a Johnny Jeter guy, and I appreciate you coming on.
that was my pleasure, man. And yeah, we'll have to get Cage and Magnus. It's funny because those guys remember some stuff. I remember some stuff, and we could tell some funny stories, and you could kind of see it from all of our perspectives, or you can see one story from 3 different perspectives. And, I don't know.
Yeah, if we could get all 3 of you on at the same time, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we may have to work on Magnus. Cage would be down. We got to work on Magnus.
Well, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, anytime. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Hey everybody, it's Morty.
It's Brian.
And thank you for watching today's episode of Developmentally Speaking.
If you could, please click that subscribe button.
And don't forget to punch that bell icon so you can get notified whenever we go live or drop a new video every Monday. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next
Developmentally Speaking.